Welcome to the Wealth Transfer with TC. Today I'm going to give you guys a quick update on Zion Oil and Gas. They recently had a shareholder meeting, and I'm going to share some things concerning that meeting and give you my thoughts, my opinions, the short-term and the longer-term outlook. Now, everything that I'm getting ready to share is already out there in public, whether it be statements or anything that Zion Oil has shared in the video or in their statements. I've shared with you guys that this is a long-term investment. There's a lot of delusion that people think that Zion Oil is going to reach $50 or $100 based off of one announcement, and a lot of people don't understand that. First of all, Zion Oil is in the OTC markets. They're going to have to do more than just have a viable well. They need a well that is going to make enough money for them to drill the next well. Now, I've been investing in off and on with Zion Oil since 2018. I made my first video, as you can see here, in 2018. I am a different type of investor than what I was in 2018, 2019, and 2020. I've been through all the ups and downs with Zion Oil, and about the end of 2021 and 2022, I began to look at things a lot differently. I made videos that went in depth, like going over all the updates with MJL1 in comparison to its stock price. Also, when we went through the whole thing when Zion Oil got delisted from NASDAQ, right? And I also shared some information that I found disturbing when it relates to the shorts and insider information. And I shared with you guys that every time an update comes out, you notice that the day before, or depending on the day that it's released, it might be a day or two before, where you will see the short volume drop dramatically, right? And I've showed that to you over and over and over again. So that tells me that there's somebody on the inside that is sharing with somebody, whether they're at the top or whether they're at the bottom, concerning these updates with Zion Oil. The shorts are not shorting as much when they know what update is coming out. So those are the things that I've exposed with the stock. And I do believe, especially like in some of these Zion Oil groups, whether it's on Facebook or somewhere else, that there are people that are playing both sides of the fence. That means they're shorting, and of course they're making money on the other side, right? And that's what a true trader would do, right, with a stock like this. Now, this is a faith-based company, right, dealing with trying to find oil for Israel. As I believe that this is more or less for the long-term viability of Israel. So the way that I trade the stock is much different. The way that I talk about the stock is much different because I've educated myself in both the oil industry and stock trading. Not saying I'm an expert, but I can evaluate the information way better than what I could, 100 times better than what I was doing when I first got involved. Now the price is currently sitting at 18 cents. And I do believe as time goes on that you're going to see the price of Zion Oil drop. And there are multiple reasons for that, and part of that was shared at the shareholder meetings. Now, really quick, just a brief overview of why I think the price will continue to go down, because right now Zion Oil is at a crossroad. And this is a crossroad they've been before, so it's not prophetic, but they could just close up shop and decide to drill in another area. They have a lot of heavy water issues, which they did before previously with MJO2. And they didn't have the equipment on site to deal with it then, but they don't even have the equipment on site for going back into MJO1. And that is kind of concerning to me, because if this is an issue dealing with water in the past few wells that you've had, you would think you would have that special equipment on site, regardless of the cost, because now you have delays, and which could really actually cost company and investors much more than what they realize. I also believe that the rig crew is going to have to go home sooner rather than later. And you have some holidays coming up like October 7th and some other things, Jewish holidays. Some of these rig workers have been away from their families, but they have some decisions to make, and we'll go over some of those things. Especially if you're a new investor, you guys have to understand that where they are drilling in Israel, it's very difficult terrain. Here in the United States, I've read reports where they would, when they start drilling, they would know it was a viable well within a day or two. With Zion Oil, it's much different. And it does take a long time, when you think about it, folks, for them to drill a well and have all the information they need to decide whether or not if it's a viable well or not. So I do want to make clear that I do support the mission of Zion Oil. I don't have to waste my time making these videos. But you know, folks, I've brought people into Zion Oil over the years, and it's my duty to share my thoughts, my opinions, and what I think, what is going to happen, or where the price is going to be at, regardless of what anybody thinks. Now, one of the things I did do is I did upload the shareholder meeting, the transcript to ChatGPT, and it organized it for me in a way that it's going to make it easier for me to explain. But there is one part that I want you to hear, because this information was given to them a day before the meeting, and they decided to withhold it, and that is the production testing.
Job gets done. As you can see, Monty got and the whole team, the production tests have been completed in under 3 months.
So the production tests have been done, and it was completed within 3 months. They didn't give us that information, and my thoughts on why they didn't share it was because if it was positive, I would think that the enthusiasm in these Zion Oil meetings would be much different, and the atmosphere. We've been over these shareholder meetings before. I've been right every single time. When you look at body language, when you look at how they say things, you can determine the truth. So I'm going to go ahead and go over some of the things that were discussed in the meeting. So they have hydrocarbons confirmed. Of course, we knew that already. They had it the first time they went in. And then also in MgO2, they said significant, which is positive. The testing zone, they are currently testing a zone just above the Rosh Pina Shale, selected due to strong hydrocarbon readings during drilling. The stimulation operation on April 23rd, 2025 was successful. Right? Hydrocarbons reached the surface unaided for 3 days. Right? The saltwater zone, heavy brine, right, which is pretty heavy from what I understand, causing slugs, right, which impeded the steady flow. So even though it was unaided for 3 days, it was still impeded by the salt water. Coil tubing operation showed consistent gas every day, and gas samples were collected for analysis. So some of the challenges: the 730 meters of drill string remained stuck in the well, covering key lower zones, making them currently inaccessible. So they didn't get a chance to get down to the point where they really wanted to do the testing. The heavy saltwater zone, it inhibits natural flow and complicates volumetric estimation. So they did the production test, but then they also had the issue with the water that's going to mess all that up. The well bore limitations, the working diameter is as narrow as a Starbucks cup lid, complicating interventions. Considering submersible pumps to mitigate the salt water and assist flow, they're exploring the underbalanced drilling or lateral drilling to expand production. Deliberation underway whether to continue testing or to begin development drilling elsewhere. Okay, so that's very important, because they could say, you know what, we don't think MJ1 is going to work, or we're going to do some lateral drilling or horizontal drilling, right? So either way, there's going to be delays, and one is a longer delay than the other, especially if they're going to be drilling somewhere else. And I've shared with you guys that it is very important for Zion Oil to have MJ1 as a viable well. Now, do I think that the stock would collapse if they deem this as not a viable well? I think it would drop down to the 3 to the 5 cent range. But see, there's a lot of people that are invested in Zion Oil that will continue to put money in, and they make a lot of money off of the DSPP. And so the stock might be super cheap, but people are still going to invest anyway. But when I feel like that it's at a certain point, then I'll invest back in. But I need more information before I'm going to put any more money into Zion Oil. And that's just the investor part of me now. I'm just not blindly investing like I was before into things. I'm still not perfect. I still make mistakes. But I've studied Zion Oil enough over the years where I feel like I'm comfortable sharing the information that I am sharing. Okay, so they moved from Delaware to Texas, citing more business-friendly legal environments and lower franchise taxes. So I heard a lot of businesses were doing that. Fundraising looks like they're doing well with that. Now, when it comes to money and the next well, this well has to be viable enough to cover the cost of the next well being drilled. And I share that information over and over again, and you can see it pop up right here, that it costs them $2.5 million per month when they're drilling. So they need that amount of money at least for a year, right? So that is a lot of money depending on how things go, right? And how long it takes for them to drill the next well, right? So there's a lot of factors in that, but whether if it's 6 months or 10 months or a year, it's $2.5 million a month. Whatever they are bringing in from their viable well needs to cover the cost of the next operation. So investors just voted to dilute the shares, which I told you guys you should vote yes, because that's the only way Zion Oil is going to survive. And they can continue operations probably for the next couple years, whether this works out or not, but it's going to be challenging. Now, from what I understand, Zion Oil is the only active onshore oil and gas explorer in Israel. That is a huge advantage, and they're going to need to move pretty fast on that before other companies really start looking at the land in Israel, not just for gas and oil, but for other resources too as well. Now, one of the things that I've shared with you guys, and this all deals with body language, communication style, how they're acting. Now, according to ChatGPT, it says the tone of the meeting was cautiously optimistic. Repeated references to prayer, perseverance, and divine guidance reinforced Zion's unique religious venture hybrid identity. In the way that it was portrayed, and kind of like there was no enthusiasm, and along with the body language, shared with me that there are things that they know that they're not sharing, and it doesn't look as great, and that they really do need a miracle for this to work out. Okay, so the positive is they found hydrocarbons, which we already knew. They have a solid cash position. They're up to date on compliance, and they have viable development plans under consideration. Now, the risks are the most promising lower zones are currently unreachable due to equipment loss. Saltwater intrusion complicates flow and recovery. No commercial flow yet. Success still hinges on overcoming engineering hurdles. All right, so whatever decision that they have to make is going to be very important in their next step on where they're going to go, and we're going to go over that. The final opinion, as far as this first analysis, the project is in a critical wait-and-see phase. So one of the things I want to come back to is the production testing that was completed, what it actually means. The one specific zone above the collapsed casing, zone 4, was stimulated and tested. Gas flowed naturally to the surface for 3 days. The saltwater intrusion, they attempted a nitrogen lift and later coiled tubing cleanout. They collected gas samples, right? And it says here that Monty clarified that the test cycle for the zone is over operationally. More work is needed to analyze hydrocarbons, assess commercial viability, and potential optimized flow using pumps or lateral drilling. They pretty much know whether or not if it's a viable well at this point, right? And so they're going to have to try to optimize the flow using different techniques, as we discussed before, maybe lateral or horizontal drilling or whatever the case. And that's what they're going to do to try to continue to get MJ01 to a viable well. And not just a viable well, but a well that's going to cover future costs. Now, the conclusion on the testing completed. Yes, the physical test operations were completed. Does not mean conclusive commercial results have been achieved. Further engineering evaluation is underway to determine if the well could be made commercially viable using enhanced recovery methods. So they need to make some decisions concerning where they want to go from here. So basically the flow that they had was intermittent, and it was hampered by the water, right? They don't have the equipment on site to deal with it, which was kind of weird to me since MGO2 had a similar issue. Now, I don't know what all it's going to take to run that water off when they were talking about into MGO2 well. That's going to take more time, more effort, more energy, and the crew is still going to have to go home probably before they do all of this, or they're going to have to come to a stop point and then leave and come back. So they do need a better flow, right? So, and that's why they're going to pump or do the lateral drilling. All the reasons not to invest right now: there's no commercial flow yet. There's only 1 of 4 targeted zones tested. The heavy saltwater interference, no production rates or reserves was published. I think the reserve rates will come later on. The historic dilution risk, 400 million shares. That's the reasons why you wouldn't invest right now. So I had GPT pull some quotes from what was said in the meeting, And this is some of the things that they discussed, and this is where the decision making has to come in. And they said, so where do we go from here? We do not have the equipment necessary to develop, mitigate heavy salt water. We're going to have to take some time to evaluate what our best option is. Do we want to mitigate the salt water, or do we want to put resources towards potentially laddering off and extending our production capabilities in the zone? Right? So they're going to go, there's several different directions in where they can go. Now, they could decide just to say, you know what, we're done with MJ01, we're going to go to a whole new site. If they are going to drill in another location, well, one of the things is we don't even know where that's at. I know that question's been asked before, but you would think as an exploratory company, especially to keep investor interest, that you would be talking about at least one or two other locations where you would like to drill, right? Because if I'm an exploratory company, I'm not just working on one area. We plan for the future. And I think that if Zion Oil did talk about that more in between their regular operational updates, I think they would have better engagement, with its investors. And, one of the things I want to bring up, it is an exploratory company. And I know their mission, and they've found the oil. They know where the gas and oil is. They 3D mapped everything. I think the goal has been accomplished with Zion Oil. They know where it's at. It's just a matter of getting it up to the surface and to make it a commercially viable well. That's the issue. If they also decide to drill the next area, maybe the geologist or whoever, they can take the 3D maps and look and have AI look for the best area to drill in, and then have it confirmed with the geologist and other people, and maybe give that a shot if they decide that they want to drill somewhere else. Now, so when we look at the timing and what direction they want to go, we still have to discuss whether or not if the rig crew is still going to be here. They do have to go home at some point for a certain amount of time, and they've been away from their families and all these other things. And we have holidays that towards the end of September through December. There's a lot of holidays, whether it's Jewish or Christian or whatever. And there have been times where Zion Oil has ceased operations in the fall, only to start back up in January. And so we might see that come up. So there's going to be some delays. There's some things that I think that are going to happen with Zion Oil and Gas. And I think that at some point there's going to be a massive sell-off. But at some point after then, things are going to change. There's a lot of people that are, as I shared with you, playing both sides of the fence. And they're the ones who are making the money, getting you to invest, and telling you not to put in your stop losses when you should be putting in your stop losses. Right? And there are people telling you it's wrong to swing trade to gain more stocks. And the only reason why somebody would tell you that is because they're working both sides of the fence. And if they're not a very good trader. They want you to keep investing. People have invested at $15 or $16 that are in these groups, and they're still waiting, and they still have never sold. I think that's a mistake. So over the next month, we should hear what direction Zion Oil is going to go into. That's all that I have for this today. I thank you guys for listening. God bless. TC out.